The Untold Stories on DEFCON 25, a documentary project featuring the journey of journalists in South Sudan and across Africa.
They forgot to run the story and they were so excited.
I started thinking of journalism and practicing it in school.
My journey to journalism, it's just about passion.
I was active doing this work of journalism for the past 12 years.
My journey of journalism dates back to 2015.
Journalists have served our communities and elevated our cultures behind the mics and behind the cameras. They have educated us, entertained us, informed us. Their work has influenced our policies and promoted our culture, but their stories have never been known to so many.
I started thinking of journalism and practicing it in school in 2002 when I was in senior 2. And I was in senior 2, I started being a journalist in the school where we tend to interview students and see what is happening and report them. For instance, those who have been in school have experienced where when there's a problem at the line of food where people are struggling, we write that as a news. And we started from there, and it was interesting to me, and then I took it up. And then after my O-level in 2004, I passed, then 2005, actually 2004, November, when I completed O-level, then I moved to South Sudan, and then I was in Uganda. I moved to South Sudan, and then later, 2005, I moved to Western Equatorial State. When I went to Western Equatorial, my intention was not to go and do journalism. I went to search for my father because my father left me there for more than 3 years and he was not supporting us. And I didn't know what is making him to stay in Western Equatorial State. So by coincidence, as I was going away, my father was also coming back, but I decided to proceed, not to stop coming back with my father. I need to understand what exactly was the issue. And somehow, when I relate to journalism ground, it is like I'm going to investigate the causes of why other people go to other locations and then come back. So I now understood why. When I went to Western Equatorial in 2005, and by coincidence, I got trained by a Reverend Sister working for CRN in Western Equatorial State. She was actually the directress for unheard FM in 2005. That was the first time I got trained on basic journalism, like the ABC, like the 5Ws plus H in journalism. That I started now opening up my mind. So in the process, I didn't continue with trainings, neither practicing the profession. Instead, I ventured to survive by being a carpenter. So I was managing a carpentry workshop, and later I started my own carpentry workshop. And I was doing a lot of furniture work. But later, I returned in 2009 to Central Equatoria, Yeas particularly, where I now started at least 3 months training with organized by MS Sudan. By then it was MS Uganda. But now they moved to South Sudan, they call it MS Sudan because it was still under Sudan before the election in 2009. So we got trained as journalists based actually to be connected to a community radio station called Greater Yei FM. Though it did not come on air, and then we were trained and we volunteered for a number of months. Actually, let me say 2 years, I was just volunteering. There was no payment, by the way. So we were trained, and then we were only collecting stories within Yei, and later try to see where do we publish them. Now, after that, from 2009, 2010, then our stories started coming on air. And I started managing journalists for Greater Yei FM, that later transitioned to Star FM, because Greater Yei was covering Yei, Morobo, and Lanya, including Kajukeji. So we covered stories that comes from all these counties, and then they were broadcasted on Liberty FM. And on Liberty, I was the editor by then. I collect the stories, but then we didn't have computers. What we do, these journalists write their stories on a paper, bring to me, I edit them, I rewrite them, and then we have the written copy now to be read on air. And we were using cassette recorders. The cassette recorders we have to record, which is an old way of doing things. But what we did, we usually do like we mark what do we need to quote from this recording. We have to rewind to the point where we wanted it. Like now we ended up marking the first word and the last word in the clip. So what the source was saying, the first word, and that is if it is like 20 seconds, you have to mark at least the first word in the 20 seconds until the last word where the source now concludes, and then you proceed reading your story. So we carefully now rewind it to that point, and then we bring the cassette recorder, place it on the microphone. After reading, and then when it is time to play the clip, we bring the cassette recorder and play it on the microphone. After playing, we carefully, when we know it is now the last word, when I know, because now nobody will see me on air in the radio to see what I am doing. But what they wanted is to listen to my voice and the voice of the sources.
Yeah.
So I have to play the last word. When I know it is the last word, that cassette recorder has a pause, so I have to pause it carefully so that nobody notices that I'm playing a cassette recorder because it makes noise. So carefully I have to pause it on air, and then so that people continue enjoying the audio. It was successful and it was fun to me, and I continued. Though collecting news was a big challenge, but we were given bicycles. We used to go 14 miles out of here to collect news with the bicycles. You can know how tiresome it is, and sometimes you don't even have money, but you volunteer to go because you wanted to continue informing people of what is happening in the various communities.
Yeah.
So all the journalists from the 3 counties were given bicycles to go and access information. There was no bicycle. Though there were motorcycles, we couldn't manage to use them because they are limited and expensive as well to go out with. Though I didn't know also, I was not able to ride a bike anyway.
Right then, okay.
But then I couldn't have to ride. It's only a bicycle that I can ride. So it proceeded well, and then after we are done, I got myself working with the Liberty. The Liberty, then I managed working also with the Spirit FM in the news. After my colleague left, Akim Olumugusa left, then we started with my colleague Benson Agere. And then there's one journalist, Patrico, who had been there as a presenter all along. So we started the news section, and then we proceeded. It was not that easy because we were having a computer, but the computer was run out on Spirit, where we have to. The computer normally, when you leave it, it goes and it goes flat. So we have to use something to support it at the back as you do your work. And then when you go on air as well, you have to be holding it and the So it was really, it sounds funny, but we like the job. We continue despite the challenges that are there. So we have to hold the computer to continue reading the news. So we got used to computers, and I didn't, me myself in my life, I didn't train how to, I didn't go to a computer course, by the way, where I can use computer. I learned computer myself. So as a journalist, I thought, it's important. And that was way back in Yambio, when I was in Western Equatoria, there was a resource center. I even opened my Gmail account without knowing how to use computer. But of course, I needed to connect. I wanted to see if others can be there, why can't I also do that? And then it was the one way. So after my encounter as a spirit, and later on I got opportunity to be managing a radio station in Morocco called Radio Morocco FM, which was funded by GIZ, and then I worked as a volunteer as well because GIZ later withdrew, and then after the 2013 I was still managing the radio until the conflict broke in, and then it also interrupted some of our operations. But we continued later, and then 2014 I ended up coming now out of Morocco to work with the Central Equatorial State Secretariat as a press secretary in the Office of the Cabinet Affairs. May her soul rest in peace. Late Cecilia Oba. I was press secretary, and then I was covering 3 offices. The Office of the Deputy Governor, the Office of the Cabinet Affairs, and the Office of the Governor. By then, Clement Wanikonga was the governor. So we were covering all this. We covered a lot of events here and there. And then every story I write within the State Secretariat, I used to share it with the various media houses. And by the way, something I forgot, when I was in here also, I started writing. I was paid £5 per story. And then later I was paid 30,000. 30 pounds.
30 pounds.
Yes.
It was less than 50 pounds.
Yes, but then the £5 was paid where I write the story, I'm the author of the story, but but somebody publishes the story. My colleague who is a Ugandan, he was actually the marketing person for Southern Eye. So I write the story, I give the story to him, and then he publishes in his name. And I got happy because the story is published.
Yeah.
I don't mind about the money, but I wanted to be there. Later on, he noticed that my story skill was, the way I write the story was improving. Because normally, after writing, when it is published, I go and read the newspaper, read the article and compare to what I've written. And that was how I started learning and improving the content.
That was very unique.
And to see that, what have I done different that I need to improve.
Yeah.
And that was how I got inspired to move forward on that. So later on, we started something called Maroba newspaper, which was in Yei. So it's a magazine which comes monthly. So Maroba newspaper was also funded by MS Sudan. And then I have the editor by then was Atai Manuel, that was the editor for Maroba newspaper. So we were working so closely. And then it was really selling. I was the one distributor as well, going up tomorrow distributing the Maroba newspapers, sometimes up tomorrow, up to Lanya, bringing those newsletters. And then that was how the whole thing, how it became inspired me. And it became really like, I can do more. And then later from Southern Eye to South Sudan Today, the Independent newspaper, the Patriots, the Citizen newspaper. And then later I also got to contribute to the Niles.org. That later they changed to SudanVote.org. So now, from SudanVote.org, now they changed to the Niles.org. So I was a contributor writing stories. So from my work after the State Secretariat, I also dropped off. And then I started also my freelancing, where the first thing, NPA supported our trip to visit Ugandan oil fields. You know, that write stories on how oil exploration and extraction had been done. And then comparing the waste management of Uganda oil field to South Sudan. How do Uganda manage waste compared to South Sudan? We also visited South Sudan oil fields. We visited like Heglik, we visited Melut, we visited Tarajaj, and then Unity oil fields. So we noticed that I even wrote a story of the effects of the crude oil to the environment, where trees were dying, and it was really not that easy. We moved around, and because the management was not in place. But of course, we covered it. We wrote stories with some of my colleagues. In 2009, I had that encounter visiting the Danish media, the biggest media, and I interacted with journalists. My trainer by then in South Sudan is a Danish. May her soul rest in peace. She's passed on, but she trained me, and she's the one who exposed me to visit even the Danish TV, radio, and meeting other journalists. Even the community radio station. There's we were in Copenhagen, and then we moved to Aalborg, and then other parts of Denmark at least we went. Aalborg is towards the border with Germany, and that is closer to where she actually stays. And after we were done, we came back, and I was almost to carry even a transmitter to South Sudan. And then this mobile broadcast device, I was to come back with it. Unfortunately, it was hard for me even to bring because of the process of bringing, so I couldn't. And later in 2012, I had a trip to Egypt. But then after independence, the referendum, I covered the election, by the way. By then I was in Yei. I had to come all the way from Yei to Juba to get accreditation for all the journalists in Yei, and then those in line and those that are managing Yei before the elections. So it was fun. I have to move from one polling station to another, cover the process, how people are lining up to the whole process is done. And after election, I visited also Cairo. It was an encounter with African journalists, those from Namibia, Zimbabwe, those are South Africa, Senegal, and Kenya, Uganda. So it was an interactive session. At the moment, I'm a trainer, and that is a good step forward. That I had a dream now. How do I train fellow journalists on basic journalism skills, and then physical safety. Through Protection International, I was able to have a diploma in physical safety so that I'm able to guide journalists and human rights defenders in the country. And then I also try to have some trainings with different organizations like Defenders, so that I can now help journalists and human rights defenders on physical and digital safety related issues. Because I had a thought, a dream that I need to be a trainer after being a journalist, and I have to be a trainer. So now I've been training people.
You have achieved it now.
So many.
Yeah.
And there are others I even forgot. I remember there was one of the participants one time. He said I trained him in 2012.
Oh.
And then it was this year, this year in an event he was to go and do a facilitation and said, you inspired me after the first training you had to me. I was like, okay, that is okay.
Yeah.
So we need this to be going.
Yeah.
As journalists is concerned, it requires commitment and courage. It is not that easy because we might be obstructed in one way or the other not to do it and that thing. So but basically, that's the whole thing. And now that I'm the executive director for National Press Club, it's a media institution. And it's because I'm inspired from my past experience to be in the National Press Club. So it's a union. How do we bring journalists together in order to improve the working environment? Improving the working environment does not come from nothing. And that always comes like, I have normally the statement that I always say, if there are no challenges, then there's no need to develop strategies. And I think the challenges we face in journalism is what taught us to think of National Press Club. With my fellow colleagues, we have to think of something that brings journalists together. We know UJOS is there. I've worked for UJOS as a press freedom monitor from 2015 up to 2018. And I also worked for AMDIS as a media development officer before I got to UJOS, at least for a number of months. By then complementing Irene, who is now the director of AMDIS. She was by then as a media development officer, and then I had to complement as he was on leave. So to cover up that. So we had a training with late Alfred all over the country, and the AMDIS by then when I was working there. So to train journalists on this, how to move forward. Somehow this is where we are.
I decided to ask Alfred about the challenges, the milestones, and his success tricks along the journalism journey.
Some families don't want to accept their children to be journalists. That is a big challenge so far. They have the thoughts, or the passion, the dream to achieve as journalists, but somehow they are not obstructed not to practice or to go and continue doing the work as journalists. And I think that's the one thing they can do forward. Secondly, is the resource. The resources for us to get whatever we need, for instance, to move around, and then including also like for you to access information, you need transportation. And then other thing related to sources is also like sometimes you wanted to meet someone, the managers block you and you will not access the source. So this is a big challenge, but sometimes you need to use alternative, appropriate ways. Get me clear, alternative, appropriate ways. And the other thing is also dressing code. Dress appropriately when you go to a specific office. For instance, you cannot dress in a suit when you are going to interview a farmer. So you dress appropriately. Because if your dressing code is not appropriate, you may not be allowed to access information from specific sources. You cannot also interview a minister and you are dressed as if you are going to the club. So these are some of the things I've noticed that sometimes get ourselves being blocked from accessing information. I do understand that some of the challenges are also related to the media house we are working for. Sometimes the media house, if your media house is misunderstood because of its critical stories that is always published, sometimes you will not be allowed to access information from other sources. So, as journalists, it's important now to diversify the way you access information. Not only what is broadcasted, but now go to documents. If you don't get the sources, go to documents, verify and back it up. And sometimes it's hard, internet-wise. You don't have enough internet to access information. So this is also something else. And then I noticed also language. You wanted to talk to someone who is not in your language. So sometimes it is hard, but the solution could be related to having a stringer. There's that also big challenge, like normally when you are working on investigative stories, like I had the challenge of being arrested.
Curious about the future that Alfred sees for himself, and for the journalists, I asked Alfred to share with me what he thinks about the future.
We have to continue learning. You who started recently, you accept criticism, positive criticism from those that have been in the profession before. Don't just stick to being just in the media house. Be flexible. For instance, if you are working for a private media, you write your own stories that you can publish. Have a linkage, liaise with your own old friends and then new friends and other media houses. I used to write concept documents, and I think this is a future that some journalists have to think of. Write concept documents. If you're a freelance journalist, this is advice to you. As freelance journalists, think of writing concept documents to specific organizations that have activities, for instance, health-related, for instance, agriculture and wildlife. Write concept documents to cover those stories and then think of where to publish them.
DEFCON 25 is committed to using transformative stories to promote social change and sustainable development. Engage with DEFCON 25. Follow our Facebook page, our Instagram and TikTok page at DEFCON 25. Subscribe to our YouTube channel at DEFCON 25. Remember to leave us a comment on each platform or send an email to developmentcom.25@gmail.com.